The Angry Marks Podcast Network is brought to you by WrestleWork, a social network to connect, create, and share everything about pro wrestling. Check it out today at WrestleWork.com.
You're listening to Thursday Night AMP on the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
All right, well, Jordan, back to you.
Well, it's funny that you bring up CWE because one of CWE's main guys on the roster is one of your best friends in the wrestling business and outside of the wrestling business. A guy I'm quite familiar with, I'm a friend with outside of the wrestling business, is Shane Madison. Tell us about your friendship with Shane Madison.
Shane Madison is single-handedly most responsible for every booking job I ever got. I have nothing but the kindest and most amazing things to say about Shane. I met him in 1999. I was booking River City Wrestling, and he was brought in. That was my first booking job. And he came in, he showed up, and I looked at him, and he had gear, and he had physique, and he had a tan, and I was like, wow, this guy's a little bit different than everybody else. And him and I worked the program because that's what the promoter wanted. He wanted the heel booker to work Shane Madison. And then I went on to be a TV broadcaster, came back a year and a half later, and Bobby J's booker, Vance Nevada, was leaving, and I believe something happened. I wasn't too hands-on. I was actually going through depression, and I think it was Madison talked to Vance Nevada and said, look, you're going to be gone. Mike's the most creative guy still here. Why don't you transition the book to him somehow? Anyway, it might have been Bobby J was the one who ultimately gave me the job and paid me to do it. And, Bobby recently in a podcast said that he wasn't as complimentary to business going up as I might be in my recollection. But you know what? Here's what I'll say about Shane Madison in that era. From 1999 to 2004, if Shane Madison was in a good booked program in the main event, houses were high. And I'm talking, him and I in 2002 in the fall did about 400 people at a weekly venue. Okay. Now that's not easy to do. It was a lot easier in 2002. All due respect to anybody else who's running now who says 400 or whatever, right? He wrestled main events against Will Damon. He wrestled main events against TJ Bratt. He wrestled main events against Adam Knight. He wrestled main events against Chi Cruz and Mike Davidson or Mike Myers. They all drew and drew substantially. So a lot of people don't like to give him credit because he maybe was involved politically. He could help me get me the booking job with TRCW, PCW. He introduced me to the money backer for that company. And he's the one who introduced me to Jeff Dick for WFX and AWE. So every booking job I ever got was thanks to Shane Madison. Now I'll flip that equation and say all the hot main events that he drew in was booked by Mike Davidson. So together as a team, it's like a head coach and a starting quarterback. It works in a certain dynamic. You give a certain booker creative freedom and you give a talent the right ingredients he's going to draw. And that's what happened from 1999 to 2004. There was not a bigger draw locally than Shane Madison. This is a guy who when we tried to put in the depression angle as a heel, turned into the hottest babyface in the company by accident. So I have highest praise for Shane Madison.
You bring up Bobby J as well as Vance Nevada, who you talked about earlier. And everyone in Winnipeg Wrestling, everyone knows who Bobby J is. The nicest guy you'll ever meet. He loves to party. He loves to go to the Spike, which is awesome. I go to the Spike all the time with Bobby J too. It's great. But your experiences with Bobby J, tell us about that.
I consider them all positive. One thing I'll say about this, it would be wrong for me to say anything negative to anybody who owned a company and gave me the ball and said, you're the man. Bobby is one of the guys that fired me in that position. And he felt he had to. And to be honest, in that landscape, he probably had I understand it. It was business was good, but I understand, recently he said, that I like to pick on guys. Hey, I believe there's people that shouldn't be in the business. And if you have to pick on them for them to get the point, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I am a huge proponent for a great rib when the opportunity is there. And I don't care if that rib is heartbreaking to the person who gets it, because that's real life people. People get people get bad hands dealt to them all the time. I have no grief with Bobby for firing me. At the time, it was quite different. I told him, firing me is a big mistake. And I started PCW, and there was a lot of piss and vinegar that was all about being better than Bobby J. He motivated me. He fueled me. But when he gave me the book, it was the best opportunity that I got at the time. And you know what? He worked his ass off to provide the guys with places to work, and he believed in everybody. Everybody got a shot, whether they were the most talented or the least talented. He just believed everyone was equal, and he gave everybody a shot. And what you said, he's a great guy to have a drink with. And you know what? I think he's knocking on 50, but he still parties like he's 23 years old. Nothing negative at all to say about Bobby J. He said his ears would be burning, but I think he'll be surprised that I've got no beef with him.
The guy is totally, he lost all this weight. I don't know anybody who has something bad to say about him.
That's the best thing you can say about him?
No, the man's a complete class act. He's even let me stay over at his place a few times while we were partying, the Crash at. The man is a complete class act, a terrific wrestler, and at the time when he ran Top Rope Championship Wrestling, he was an excellent promoter. Bobby J, to me, is one of my favorites in local wrestling as an interviewer and as a fan. He's a total complete class act. I have nothing bad to say about Bobby J. Now we switch gears and we talk about Vance.
No. I want to add one. Hold on one second. I want to add one more thing about Bobby. If it hadn't been for Bobby J coming through what he did and starting up TRCW, you would never hear the names today of Shane Madison. You might not hear the name Adam Knight. You definitely probably wouldn't hear Mike Davidson. So the reality is, I think him giving us that platform at that time is unbelievable. It had an unbelievable impact that I don't think people have ever really given it too much thought about. The option was Ernie Todd, and a lot of us just didn't want to go there, didn't want to be there. Bobby gave us the option, and so, I owe him a debt of gratitude. Now you can go on to Vance if you want.
Well, pretty much, and I've had a kind of a fallout with him before, and we talked it out, we discussed it, but I want to know your opinion on Vance Nevada, your own cousin in the wrestling business, and of course in real life. What are your thoughts on Vance Nevada?
Do you want me to sugarcoat and say something nice, or do you want me to say something
whatever you want? That's what Angry Marks is for, so.
Uncensored.
1995, Vance Nevada got me into the wrestling business. 1995, 96, 97, Vance Nevada protected me in the business. Vance Nevada was the most political guy in the wrestling business in Central Canada in those years, and probably right up until the 2000s. Vance Nevada will tell you he knows how to book. I'm here to tell you Vance Nevada couldn't book himself out of a paper bag. It's true. He did not know he didn't know who to push. He didn't know how to push. He believes in a yay boo spot for the heel and the babyface in his second match. He, just based on the amount of influence he had, he was able to train a lot of guys. Mentolo is a better wrestler now, not because Vance Nevada trained him, but because Mentolo set out after the path. Vance gave him the bare necessities. And that happened with every other guy that Vance Nevada ever trained. The way I learned how to book was by watching what Vance Nevada would do and saying to Vance, I think you're wrong. And it was private conversation. We were very close friends at the time. Vance, you're pushing the wrong people. And he would say he thought he knew what he was doing. Vance Nevada couldn't draw as a wrestler in any degree. And he couldn't draw as a booker, okay? And I'm going to sound ultra negative here, but it's true. And if he wants to step up and say, oh, wait a minute, I drew. Let me tell you something. In 2002 with PCW, with Andrew Shellcross in his first month in the business, and John Newen giving us the money to bring in names, we drew 1,500 people in Winnipeg. Some will say 1,700. With Eddie Guerrero, Honky Tonk Man, and Brutus Beefcake. And then in late 2005, we drew 1,000 again with the Steiner brothers and Billy Gunn and Chuck and a whole bunch of people. And then in 2008, 1,000 people again, WFX with Sonny and Eugene and Chris Masters. The common denominator is that all three of those shows that I just mentioned, I was the booker for, and 1,000 people showed up. I don't think Vance Nevada has drawn 3,000 people in however many wrestling matches he claims to have had in 15 or 20 years of a career. He's a historian, and he claims to be a renowned author. But here's the reality. If you're writing about history, and all you're doing is saying, on April 17th, 1987, this happened, you're not creative. You're reporting the facts as they happen. The fact that you're the only guy who wants to be tedious enough to care about whether wrestler A and B wrestle to a no contest does not make you special. So I don't have a lot. I can say good things about him. He got me into the business, protected me. Certainly at that time, I was political enough, but too young to be able to, take the heat that I might have caused. And he certainly helped deflect that heat. And he's a nice enough guy. I have nothing to say about him as a human being, but realistically, I don't think there's anything special about him, honestly. And, he'll write a book and say, in his book, he says AWE only got on pay-per-view because of Steve Stryker, Darren Metzler. It's inaccurate. That's not how we got on pay-per-view. But he writes it like it's historical fact in an encyclopedia. And it's fucking horseshit. And maybe if he writes another book and puts in more stats of how many matches Mentallo won and lost, he can write it accurately. If he calls me and says, how did AWE end up on pay-per-view in Canada? The actual guy that deserves the credit is a wrestler in Ontario, Chris Tidwell, who introduced me a year before for a different project to the people who made the programming decisions for pay-per-view. But he never asked me directly. He sent me an email and said, I'm writing this book. What do you have to say about AWE? And I just didn't respond, right? I didn't want to go on the record for his book. I'd go on the record for anybody else. I didn't want to do it for him. So he wrote inaccurately. And, I think his book was kind of shitty, to be honest. So that's my opinion of Vance Nevada.
Well,
So,
Jordan, if I can jump in real quick, I just wanted to bring up one quote from the page for his book, which is called Wrestling in the Canadian West. So everybody knows which book we're talking about. And this quote comes from the Honky Tonk Man, and he says that Vance Nevada is as significant as the Harts or any of the top people in the business in Canada. So clearly you disagree with the Honky Tonk Man's endorsement.
The Honky Tonk Man is being far too kind to Vance Nevada. Because, okay, maybe if you say Ross Hart, Keith Hart, one of the Harts that really was obscure, maybe one of the daughters, Vance Nevada could be that significant. He's not as significant as Stu Hart. He's not as significant as Bret or Owen Hart. And I don't think he's in the same category as Bruce Hart. So I don't think Honky Tonk Man is being fair. I think he's saying, Vance Nevada's my friend, so I'm going to say something that's way too nice about him. That's my opinion of that.
All right. I just had to get that in. Jordan, back to you.
All right. I'll ask a few more questions, and then we will wrap it up for this first half, and then we will talk about the Royal Rumble and Ring of Honor. But pretty much 2 more questions. Tell us about the heat you carry still to this day. What do you have to say about that?
You mean the heat that others have with me?
Yes, exactly.
I don't live or die on it. Some of it was caused because I believe in a great rib when I see it. And I get scapegoated on ribs I had nothing to do with, I think it's funny when when a bad rib is pulled on somebody and they say, fuck, Davidson pulled this. I think that's great personally. If I didn't do it, I think it's even better that I didn't do it, but still got the credit for it. And some of it has to do with, I don't claim to be easy to work with. And if I thought someone was great, I treated them like I thought they were great. And if I thought someone maybe had too good of an opinion of themselves, and maybe I suffer from that. And that's maybe why they don't like me, but I didn't go out of my way to blow up their tires if I didn't think they deserved it. And the one thing I will lean on is the talent that I pushed in 2010. They all did something in the business. So you can say, oh, well, you shithead, you don't know everything about who's good or not. But Michael Elgin did way more in the business than, say, local wrestler, insert name. I was going to insert the name. I'm not going to do it. So, people have heat. I think it's great. Because I'll tell you this. I said this to somebody I really respect a couple of days ago. I said, if I ever end up in a world where 10 out of 10 people love me, I'm not going to like that world. And if I ever end up in a world where 10 out of 10 people hate me, I'm not going to like that world either. I'm very happy with a 70-30 split. I prefer it to be 70 people like me and 30 people don't. But when it ends up 30 people like me and 70 people don't, I don't care because I have a very thick skin. I don't care what people say about me. I hope if you're going to say something bad about me, base it on truth and reality. If you do that, I have no issue with what you're saying. But if you base it on, well, you know, you were kind of like somebody said, oh, Mike Davidson's really smug. Great. Mike Davidson's also a hardworking guy and very passionate. And when I ran WFX, I made sure I was the hardest working guy. And I made sure that it didn't matter that Mike Davidson was there or not there so much as the talent were pushed first. The fans were the most important piece and that the product reflected that. And I think if everybody did that, if everybody thought, hey, how are we going to get 50 new people to like our product this show? How are we going to get the house up from dozens to hundreds, from hundreds to thousands? That's what you need to strive for. And companies that are in business, in some cases 10 years, 5 years, 2 years, you've got to be trying to create new fans, create an experience, develop their passion, and create their loyalty. If you do that, I'm going to have nothing but respect for you. If you're a wrestler and you say you're this, you better be able to back it. And the peers in the industry, other companies better be booking you because you're that fucking good. Don't sit there and say, I'm a big deal in Winnipeg and Mike doesn't like me. What have you done elsewhere? Right? That's what matters. I don't mind that you have a healthy opinion of your own talent. Everybody needs to have that confidence and that swagger. But don't take it to heart when somebody says, well, I think you could be better. And that's what it amounts to. If that creates heat, shove the heat up your ass. I don't care if you got heat. You know, I have heat with certain people for certain reasons. Marty Gold has heat with them for good reason. I wrote a scathing blog about the poor guy. It was funny to me. Unfortunately to him, he took it to heart. Marty's the most entertaining guy I know, one of the smartest people I know, but he takes things to heart too much. He never forgave me. I don't mind that. You know, Andrew Shellcross for a very long time had heat with me, but him and I always had a level of respect for each other. Bernie Todd and I don't have any positive really to say about him. I didn't work for him since 1997. I have no ambition to ever work for him again. Any negative he has to say about me, he can take it with him. Negative energy is the type of thing that creates cancer.
For sure. And what is everyone listening, what do they need to know about Mike Davidson?
Oh, I think that is the most broadest question you ever could have asked me.
I was going to say, what don't they know that they didn't just learn in the last 45 minutes?
But meaning,
okay,
like, what should the fans know as one thing? Like pretty much about Mike Davidson, what do you want the fans to know most?
From a wrestling fan perspective, here's what I want them to know. That if I put my name to a show, if I say I'm involved with this wrestling product, it is going to strive to be something better than I've done before. So if you've liked PCW, AWE, River City Wrestling, TRCW, or WFX, if I'm saying 5 years later, I'm going back in the business, and I wasn't out of the business because I didn't have opportunity or I didn't have ambition to be in the business. I have a very good living. I make a very decent living outside that you know what, when you get into your 30s, if you're driven to do your hobby, wrestling isn't a hobby to me because when I put myself in it, I don't go toes deep. I don't go ankle deep. I don't go knee deep. I go all the way in until I'm drowning. So imagine, what else can I do when I'm in there except devote my entire life to it? Danny Duggan devotes his entire life to wrestling. So he has to have a level of success to make a living because he's that deep in it. I'm just as deep, if not deeper, when I'm in there. So if I go out there and I'm doing it, they need to know I take it seriously. I believe there's a certain potential that this could be. And I think there's only one thing that makes me tick. Whether the fans hated me or loved me, whether the wrestlers loved me or hated me, whether you're a heel or a babyface in the business, you have to make people care. Sometimes it's negative energy and sometimes it's positive energy. Like if you as a person can't create an emotion in the people, you're screwed. You're in the wrong world. You can't get a girlfriend if you can't get her to create energy. You can't get a job if the guy hiring doesn't have an emotional attachment to you after the interview, right? He can hate you, but he needs to believe you're going to be talented and be something that's going to add to his business. If you can't create that emotional interest, you're screwed in life. And one thing I can say, I can always create emotion in the people I'm talking to. So that's what people need to know. Whether they understand me enough to like me, whether they think, oh, that guy is a fucking asshole who's full of himself. I don't care what they think, but they care enough to have an opinion. I appreciate that.
All right. And is there any plugs you would like to put out there, Mike?
I would like people who care about checking out a good product, a good wrestling product, to check out the WFX Overload YouTube channel. If they want, they can follow us on Twitter at WFX Wrestling. I pick on the TNA executives on there. I got banned by Vince Russo for saying I didn't think he was that creative. Poor guy couldn't take it. Another guy thinks I'm an asshole. And if they want, they can follow like our Facebook page, WFX at www.facebook.com/WFX Wrestling. And I'll tell you this, I believe right now the chances are better than ever that WFX will return to television with a product that will be brand new. And I believe it could happen in the fall of 2015. I know there are people that want it to happen. There are sponsors that want it to happen. I believe there's executives formerly in WWE that would like to get behind this product. I hope it happens. I will do anything I can to make it happen. And it's, if it's meant to be, it's going to be, and I promise this product is going to be something that people are going to look at and say, it's better than I thought it was. Just like if they look at the YouTube channel, they're going to leave with the opinion of, you know what? Whether they liked Mike Davidson or they didn't, it's better than they thought it was going to be, or it's better than they wanted to say it was going to be. That's what I want.
Thank you so much, Mike, for being on tonight.
Jordan, thank you.
All
Steve,
right, Mike,
thank you very much.
Mike, before you go, I got one more question for you if you got another minute.
I got as much time as you need.
All right, well, this is the last one, and then we'll let you go. But since you mentioned APOC, and we know him better as Victor of Connor and Victor in the Ascension, I wanted to know what you thought, having known him when he first got his start in the business, of what they're doing with him right now on TV.
Okay. I said this the night he debuted on Raw. I messed up because I did not know what we had with Victor. And Eugene came up to me and he's like, you're looking around for a top guy. You don't need to look any further. And he pointed at APOC and he said, that's your guy right there. He's got talent. He's oozing talent. I didn't see it. I thought he was good and he had good size and I needed a heavyweight to look like a heel. And I really thought he was good in the role that he was put in, but I didn't see the potential. He's doing what he's being told to do. And I think I love tag team wrestling. I love it. And, the tag team, the Ascension tag team, they remind me more of Chronic than they do LOD or the other guys. Because of maybe the way they look. I don't know why, but that's what I see when I see it. I think they're going to be stars, but I don't think WWE doesn't push guys as tag teams for long. I think what will happen is that they'll eventually get repackaged and be split. I think he'll have a healthy, long career in WWE, and I think he deserves it. So my opinion of what they're doing on TV, I think they're throwing something at the wall. People are talking about it, so it's not so bad. It's great that he's going to work with Billy Gunn, another WFX alumni. I think that the negative feedback, hey, it doesn't matter as long as you're creating an emotion. Buff Bagwell made a career out of people not understanding him, and everybody had an opinion. You have to worry when nobody has an opinion, and I can give you examples of wrestlers where nobody gives a shit. I remember our creative guy when he started with the WFX product, and he said, and I don't want to say names because it would be offensive if I said, oh, he said this guy, but he said, take a look at this guy. What is this guy? And insert name, Paul Evans, right? When you're in independent wrestling and you're creating a gimmick, realize that the more character you have, the more that they can talk about after, the better off you'll be, right? If you're just going to be a guy with a body in wrestling tights and your name's going to be Steve Evans or Daryl Bradley, you're screwed because they're not even going to remember your name and they're not going to remember anything about you, right? But if you're something significant like somebody who was convicted of a crime, you know, something to, you're something that you played football, or you were a boxer, or you were, you know, a vampire, right? They can get behind it because they don't need to remember your name. They can say, oh, the firefighter, yeah, he's pretty good. But if you just have a first name and a last name, and you think because you're good looking, or because you say, come on, everybody, that they're all going to get behind you and remember you, you're done. What's Advanced Nevada, right? I don't think people are going to work the next day after they went to a local show going, that guy, Beefy Goodness, Advanced Nevada. They're not. He didn't give them enough to remember because there's not enough there. That's my opinion.
Well, I guess Rick Victor is giving people something to remember, but it's not necessarily complimentary. But you're right. He is creating memories right now. So maybe that's something of the Vince Russo philosophy you could actually agree with, because Russo always said, as long as people are talking about you, you did something right.
Yeah, well, you know what? People still talk about Outback Jack, right? It didn't work. It didn't work. But if a local wrestling show said, in the main event, Outback Jack is going to wrestle local heel, people would be like, the same guy? And they're going to be curious enough to want to check it out. I would be. I'd be like, who in their right mind? I booked Virgil once, okay? So
all right,
that's pretty much it. One thing I'll say for a wrestling fan right now, between Lucha Underground and New Japan Pro Wrestling and Ring of Honor and TNA and WWE, there's so much wrestling on TV that you get to pick the show you like the most. It's like picking the sports team you want to win. So it's the perfect time to be a wrestling fan. And to be honest, out of all those companies, the one that suffers the most in the current situation is TNA, because everybody gets to compare to TNA. And if Lucha Underground is better than TNA, that's very bad for TNA. And if Ring of Honor is better than TNA, that's very bad for TNA, because TNA has a bigger budget than all those companies. So they've got to accomplish more than every one of them.
I can't.
And that's all I've got to say, unless you have any more questions.
No, that's it, Mike. I thank you for the time tonight. Thank you for getting in touch with Jordan and coming on our show. It's been a great interview, and we'd love to have you back again.
Anytime. Thank you very much.
All right. Have a good night.